My name is Naomi Blake, and at 31 years old I was working as an intake coordinator at a pediatric clinic in Minneapolis when my life got flipped upside down. That was the day I learned I supposedly owned a house I'd never laid eyes on, and was 3 months behind on a mortgage I had never agreed to, signed, or even discussed with anyone. The call came in on a Wednesday afternoon, right in the middle of a normal workday. I was wrapping up patient intake notes, half paying attention while a coworker joked about her toddler's latest public meltdown, when my cell phone vibrated in my pocket. The number wasn't familiar. Most of the time I would have ignored it and let it roll to voicemail, but something about that call felt different. It didn't give off spam energy. I couldn't explain it, but my gut told me to answer. I stepped out into the hallway for privacy and picked up. "Miss Blake, this is Nathan from North Lakes Credit Union," the man said. "I'm calling about your mortgage on the Highland property. Your account is 3 months past due." I remember blinking hard, like maybe my ears had misfired. "I'm sorry," I said slowly. "What mortgage?" He repeated the number, calm and practiced. $623,000. For a moment, I couldn't make words come out at all. I lived in a rented one-bedroom apartment near Hennepin Avenue. I didn't have savings for a down payment, no cosigner, and definitely no fantasy about buying a house in this economy. Everything about this screamed scam. But then he read the address. Highland Avenue. First the name meant nothing, and then it meant everything. My sister Alyssa and her husband Gavin had moved into a beautiful craftsman-style home on Highland just a few months earlier. I'd visited once. We'd eaten moose cake out on the patio. The memory hit me all at once, and my whole body went cold. I ended the call as politely as I could manage, then locked myself inside the staff restroom. With shaking hands, I pulled up my credit report on my phone. The account was right there. The mortgage. My name. My social security number. My address, updated to their house. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even call my sister. I just stared at my reflection in the mirror while the truth slowly settled in, watching confusion drain out of my face and turn into something heavier. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a clerical error. It wasn't some weird mix-up. Someone had stolen my identity to buy a $600,000 home, and deep down I already knew exactly who had done it. What scared me most wasn't the debt. It was knowing that the people who raised us would probably beg me not to do a damn thing about it. After that call, the rest of the day felt unreal. The clinic's bright walls, the sound of kids laughing in the waiting room, printers humming, nurses chatting. It all blurred together like background noise from a life I'd stepped out of. I finished my shift on autopilot, smiling when expected, nodding when spoken to. Inside, something had cracked open. That night, back in my apartment, I sat on my worn green couch and stared at the ivy spilling across my windowsill. I'd grown those plants myself from clippings, kept them alive through brutal Minnesota winters, even talked to them during long nights when work wore me down. My place wasn't fancy, but it was mine. Simple. Honest. It matched the way I lived. I'd never been interested in keeping up with anyone, not even Alyssa. She was 3 years older, and growing up she was always the star. Homecoming queen. Real estate license by 22. A husband with a finance degree. Luxury SUV. Perfect Instagram feed. And me? I handled patient intakes and surgery schedules. I owned exactly one pair of heels and used my PTO for dentist appointments. I never thought of myself as boring. I thought of myself as peaceful. But peace doesn't impress people at family dinners. Every other Sunday, we all met at my parents' house in St. Paul. Dad would uncork a bottle of Cabernet and complain that it was too young, while Mom laid out her famous lasagna and insisted we take seconds before anyone finished their first plate. Alyssa always arrived late and made sure everyone noticed. Big laugh. Big stories. Big earrings. She'd compliment my shoes, then casually ask if I'd ever considered moving somewhere more grown-up than a rental. I always laughed it off. That was easier than explaining that I'd chosen stability over flash. No one asked much about my life. No one ever said it out loud, but I knew I didn't quite fit their definition of success. I had no engagement ring, no promotion stories, no beach vacation photos. What I did have were bills I paid on time and a life I wasn't ashamed of. And now that life was hanging by a thread. I barely slept that night. I lay awake replaying everything, wondering how long Alyssa had been planning this. Had she gone through my mail while I showered? Taken photos of my ID while I set the table at Christmas? Had Gavin known? Of course he had. He was always bragging about how he knew ways to make paperwork disappear. I was supposed to have dinner at their place that weekend. Alyssa had texted earlier in the week, bringing dessert. Hope you're still plant-sitting for us next month. The nerve of it made my jaw clench. They were living in a house with my name on the deed, and I hadn't even been allowed to pick the wallpaper. The next day, I walked into North Lakes Credit Union carrying my ID, my social security card, and a knot in my stomach so heavy it made breathing feel like work. The branch manager, Evan Carlson, met me in a gray conference room with a potted plant that looked too perfect to be real. He slid a folder across the table, professional and calm in a way I both respected and resented. Inside were loan documents, closing disclosures, income statements, every page stamped with my name, my address, and a signature that looked almost like mine. Almost. This was all processed online, Evan explained. Uploaded documents, digital signatures, income verification. I leaned forward. What income? $198,000 a year. I laughed, short and breathless. I make 42. His expression changed immediately. Miss Blake, if you didn't apply for this loan, then this is identity theft. You'll need to contact law enforcement and start the dispute process right away. I want copies of everything, I said, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. When I left the bank, I held that folder like it might explode. I didn't go home. Instead, I drove to a strip mall coffee shop, ordered a black coffee I never touched, and read every page like it might explain how my own sister had turned into a stranger. The days that followed blurred together, phone calls, paperwork, and a quiet kind of rage. I placed fraud alerts with the credit bureaus. My credit score, once a clean 726, had dropped to 542. And it wasn't just the mortgage. There was a home equity line of credit, 3 maxed-out credit cards, and a personal loan all in my name. All of it tied to an email address that was almost mine, off by just a few digits. Easy to overlook. Easy to dismiss. The kind of thing that could be brushed off with a laugh unless you knew exactly what you were looking at, and why. I started hunting for proof, the kind that couldn't be waved away over wine and excuses at a family dinner. A coworker mentioned that her husband worked in digital forensics, and through him I was put in touch with a handwriting analyst. He compared the signatures on the mortgage paperwork to verified samples from my nursing license and my lease. He didn't hesitate. These are forged, he told me. Carefully done but still fake. Would you testify to that? I asked. Yes, he said. That's when I realized how deliberate this had been. Someone wasn't sloppy. Someone was meticulous. Too meticulous. Then came the part I'm not proud of. I started digging. I wasn't technically entitled to pry into Alyssa's finances, but I knew where cracks usually showed if you looked close enough. Her Instagram was all champagne flutes and wide-brimmed summer hats, but it also showed far too many trips for a couple who claimed they'd recently stepped back in their careers. A friend from college worked at a high-end dealership downtown. When I asked her casually if she'd ever seen Alyssa, she didn't even have to think. She remembered her clearly. Alyssa had come in to lease a new Mercedes. Looked flawless, confident, untouchable. But when they ran her credit, the deal fell apart. It was bad enough that Gavin had to pay in cash. My friend leaned closer when she told me. He didn't look happy about it, she said. Not at all. That perfect marriage, the one our family treated like a glossy magazine spread, was already starting to tear at the seams. What shocked me most, though, wasn't the money. It was the intention behind it. They weren't just borrowing my name to stay afloat. They were setting me up to take the fall. Later, police would confirm that searches pulled from Gavin's old laptop included phrases like how to declare bankruptcy in someone else's name, and can a stolen identity be legally abandoned. That wasn't panic. That was planning. By the end of the week, I had enough evidence. Enough to go to the authorities, and enough to confront the people who raised us believing family always came first. Even then I hesitated. Not because Alyssa didn't deserve consequences, but because I knew the moment I said the word police, the people who loved us both would ask me to protect the family instead of myself. Sunday dinner came like clockwork. Lasagna as always. My mom texted the night before, asking if she should grab that mousse cake I liked from Sage and Willow. I told her not to worry about it. Alyssa already had dessert covered. Of course she did. I spent almost an hour getting dressed, not out of vanity but because I needed armor. I chose a navy blouse and dark slacks. Clean, professional, steady. I wasn't showing up as the little sister in borrowed shoes. Not tonight. The manila folder in my bag felt heavier with every step toward the door. When I arrived, nothing looked different. My dad sat in his recliner with a glass of Pinot. My mom floated between kitchen and table in her apron. Gavin helped plate the garlic bread. And Alyssa made her entrance 5 minutes late, right on cue. Her hair was perfectly curled. Her cream silk blouse hung just loose enough to look effortless. She smiled at me like everything was normal. "Naomi, finally," she said. "You look so put together. Did I miss a promotion?" I smiled back. "No promotion," I said. "Just dressing for the occasion." Dinner unfolded like it always had. My brother Sam and his wife talked about their renovation. Alyssa bragged about the sunroom in her new house and how the light hit it perfectly at golden hour. My mom laughed. My dad poured more wine. The mousse cake sat untouched in the fridge. Its presence felt like a challenge. When the plates were cleared, I reached into my bag and wrapped my fingers around the folder. My chest was tight but not with fear. That part had passed. What I felt now was certainty. I waited until the room was quiet. Forks down. Glasses half full. No one talking. "There's something I need to tell all of you," I said. My mom looked up. "Of course, honey. Is everything okay?" Alyssa leaned forward, smiling. "Is this about dating? Did someone finally make you cancel your Friday plant watering routine?" A few soft laughs circled the table. I placed the folder down in front of me. The silence that followed wasn't awkward. It was deliberate. "This is a police report," I said. "I filed it 3 days ago." My father straightened in his chair. "Police?" he asked. "What's going on?" I looked directly at Alyssa. "It's about identity theft," I said. "Fraud. A house purchased in my name. A mortgage I never authorized. Documents I didn't sign." Her smile twitched. "Naomi, what are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the house on Highland Avenue," I said evenly. "The one you're living in." My mother gasped softly. "But that's their new place, isn't it?" "It is," I said, nodding. "And according to the paperwork, it's also mine." I kept going. "The mortgage, the credit lines, the debt, all of it is under my name." Alyssa laughed, sharp and brittle. "That's insane," she said. "Why would I? How would I even do that?" "Forgery," I replied. "False income statements. An email address 1 character off from mine. Everything submitted from your old condo's IP address." I opened the folder and slid the documents forward. "Want to keep going?" Gavin stood abruptly, his chair scraping the floor. "We don't need to do this here." My dad's voice cut through the room, low and unfamiliar. "Sit down, Gavin." Alyssa's face had gone pale. She stared at the papers but wouldn't touch them. "It was supposed to be temporary," she said at last. "You stole my identity," I said. "You weren't even using it," she snapped back. "You live in a shoebox. You're underpaid." We just needed time, until Gavin's practice picked back up. "Don't," I said, my voice steady. "Don't you dare turn this into some kind of rescue story. You lied. You built your life on top of mine." Gavin rubbed the bridge of his nose. "I told you this would come back on us. You went along with it," I said. "You didn't sign the papers but you knew. You used the cards. You paid cash for a Mercedes with stolen credit." My mom stood, shaking. "Alyssa," she said. "Tell me this isn't true." Alyssa looked at her the way a kid does when the lie is too big to escape. "We were drowning," she said. "Everyone expected so much from me. The house. The image. The lifestyle. We couldn't keep up." My dad stood too. "So you decided to sink your sister to stay afloat," he said. Alyssa was crying now. Her mascara streaked just enough to show. "I didn't think it would go this far," she said. "I thought we'd fix it before anyone found out." "You were planning to file bankruptcy in my name," I said quietly. "You were never planning to fix anything." The room went silent again. Finally my father spoke. "Get out," he said. "Both of you." No, my dad said. We'll deal with the consequences, but you're not doing it under this roof. Alyssa opened her mouth like she wanted to argue, then thought better of it. Gavin took her by the arm, firm but quiet, and they left without another word. My mother collapsed back into her chair. I don't even know who she is anymore, she whispered. I didn't answer. The truth was, neither did I. The fallout hit fast, faster and louder than I'd prepared for. By Monday morning, local news had picked up the story. Prominent realtor and financial advisor under investigation for identity theft. The article didn't name me, but it listed the address. Anyone who had ever sat around our family table could put it together. My phone lit up nonstop. A cousin I hadn't spoken to in 3 years texted, "Is it true?" Someone I worked with at my very first job commented on a post with just one word, "Damn." I shut off notifications and shoved my phone into a drawer. My parents didn't have that luxury. Mom called that Wednesday, her voice thin and worn down. "Your dad won't go to his golf group," she said. "He says he can't face them." "I'm sorry to hear that," I replied evenly. "She's still your sister, Naomi." I stayed quiet. "She made a mistake," Mom continued. "A terrible one. But maybe there's a way to handle this quietly." There it was. The word everyone kept circling. Quietly. It wasn't the first time I'd been asked to stay quiet for the sake of peace. Growing up, whenever Alyssa threw tantrums or twisted the truth, I was told to take the high road. I did again and again. Until that road stopped being high and turned into a cliff. "She didn't make a mistake," I said. "She made a series of deliberate choices. She had chances to stop." My mother sighed. "She could go to prison." "I know. And the kids." That part landed. Harper and Reed. 5 and 7. Bright, funny, completely innocent. They hadn't asked for any of this. "Think about them," she said gently. "Do you want them growing up visiting their mother through glass?" That was the first moment I wavered. I didn't want revenge. I wanted restoration, my credit, my name, my life. But was justice worth the collateral damage? I didn't have an answer. Not until Stephanie showed up at my door unannounced, holding 2 iced coffees and wearing a look that said she wasn't buying my silence. "They're trying to guilt you," she said flatly. "Don't let them." She sat down across from me. "They're scared. And the kids, I get it. But let me ask you something." She leaned forward. "If a stranger had done this to you, would you hesitate?" "No," I said. "Then why does biology give her a discount?" I didn't reply. I didn't need to. I already knew. That weekend, the district attorney's office called. They told me they were moving forward with formal charges and asked if I wanted to give a statement before the hearing. I said yes. That night, I opened the drawer and checked my phone. One unread message from my mom. "You have every right to be angry, but please don't let this ruin all of us." I typed and deleted 5 different replies before sending just one sentence. She did that. Not me. 9 months after my name had been used to build someone else's dream, I signed a mortgage of my own. My name. My choice. My terms. No fake income, no ghost email accounts, no lies. Just me, a pen, and a truth I'd earned the hard way. The irony wasn't lost on me. My sister had stolen my identity to buy a life she couldn't afford. And now I was doing the very thing she claimed I wasn't ambitious enough to achieve. I bought a modest 2-bedroom in Bloomington. The backyard was patchy. The appliances were outdated. The mailbox had a dent in it. But it was mine. It was paid for with real money, real credit, and hard-earned peace. Alyssa and Gavin pleaded guilty. She received 18 months in federal prison. He got 12. Their picture-perfect online life collapsed under court records and press coverage. I didn't attend the sentencing. I wasn't interested in watching the wreckage. I was too busy rebuilding what they tried to destroy. When I moved in, Stephanie brought champagne and a welcome mat that read, "Not today, identity thieves." My parents visited separately. Mom brought lasagna in a baking dish I remembered from childhood. Dad handed me a fern in a clay pot and said, "I didn't say it before, but you were right to do what you did." It wasn't an apology, but it was something. A few weeks later, I received a letter addressed in pink marker and sealed with a unicorn sticker. It was from Harper. "Dear Aunt Naomi, I know Mommy did something really bad. I still love her. But I love you too. I drew a flower for your new house because Mommy says you grow good plants. Can I come visit one day? I sat with that note for a long time. What happened nearly broke me, but this was never a story about ruin. It was a story about putting down new roots. I may never forgive my sister, but I don't have to live in her shadow anymore. This house, flawed as it is mine. It was built on truth, not theft. On boundaries, not guilt. And for the first time in my life, I feel safe inside my own name.